East Africa Institute of Learning, and this is Mr. Swaka Mushafik to take you through the New Testament. And we say that we looked at a number of things in this course unit. We looked at the forms of worship during the early church period. How did the first followers of the church, in which ways did they worship their God? So today I want us to look at the Gospels, starting with the Gospel of Mark. We want to go through it briefly and we look at certain points in this Gospel. Remember, as persecution increased in the early days, and as the eyewitnesses began to lose their memories and some of them started to age, the early church apostles decided to sit down and compose the gospel and put the gospel into writings. So some of the writers, we have Mark, we have John, we have Matthew, and these are believed to be among the 12 disciples of Jesus. So after them composing a number of gospels, these gospels after writing different information about the ministry of Jesus, this information was compiled, and then later on it was used in the gospel selection. So as we saw last time in the past videos, there were certain criteria or procedures or factors they looked at to take certain books and also to leave certain books behind. And this is where they generated what we call the New Testament canon, where we get the 27 books of the New Testament. So after selecting a number of books and leaving some books behind, the apostles took this chance, and they were able to write more information about their master, looking at his birth, looking at his ministry, looking at his suffering moments, looking at his death, and finally his resurrection. So when they wrote these different gospels, for example, we are going to analyze the Gospel of Mark. Mark is going to talk about the life of Jesus. Is going to talk about his sufferings. It is going to talk about the triumph entry. It's going to talk about his experience, life experience, until when he was crucified and later on ascended. He resurrected on the third day, and his ascendance into heaven. That's why we said in the first place that as they were looking at the Gospels, they used to select books that were settling Jesus, books that were talking about Jesus' life, books that were talking about his death and his resurrection. So, the Mark's Gospel that we're going to look at, we shall look at the authorship briefly. Who wrote this Gospel? Whom do they believe that is the author of this Gospel? And some different things that Jesus did during his time, and still we shall see his humanity, divinity, miracles he performed that makes him to be a divine being. Then what experience did he go through that portrays him as a human being? So all that is going to be summarized in Mark's Gospel. Then we look at John's Gospel, and there are many Gospels. We have Gospel composed by Luke and many others. So let us first look at the authorship of this Gospel, because for us to know more about Mark's Gospel, we have to first understand and appreciate who the author was. So the question of the authorship of Mark's Gospel ties the question as regards a person who wrote the Gospel of Mark according to the variable evidence. Therefore, Mark's Gospel was written by, it is believed that this Gospel was written by a person called John Mark. So it was written by John Mark, who is believed to have been a close associate of the eyewitnesses of all the apostles, especially Peter. So remember, John Mark is believed to have been a close associate, or he is believed to be among those people that closely associated with some of the eyewitnesses, more so Peter. And remember, Peter is believed to be the closest disciple of Jesus. And remember when we were talking about the criteria that were followed as we were selecting the 27 books of the New Testament canon, we said books that were written by the close associates of the disciples were considered as we were selecting the books. So that's why we are seeing the book of Mark, or the Gospel of Mark, being considered. Why? They believe that John Mark was a close associate of Peter, who was among the 12 disciples. We have John Mark, who wrote this gospel, is the Mark who is believed to be the personal secretary of Peter, the senior apostle, and this is believed to have been the major source of his information. So it is believed that John Mark, who is also taken to be the authorship, the author of this Mark's gospel, is believed to have been the close secretary, the personal secretary of Peter. So it is believed that whatever he wrote, it is directly got from Peter, who was the general, who was the senior apostle. So he is John Mark. He is John Mark in whose mother's home the apostle ran away naked when Jesus was arrested, and so from his childhood he started getting associated to eyewitnesses of Jesus. So John Mark is believed to have been one of the people who associated with the close associates of Jesus. Even at the time when he was still a child, he is believed to have run away from the mother's home, and he ran naked to see and observe Jesus when he was crucified, punished, and arrested, and so on and so forth. So he is Mark, whom Saint Peter referred to as his son. So this implies that Mark is the author as the spiritual son of Peter. Remember, Peter loved so much John Mark, and so it is believed that whatever he wrote, the authorship behind this gospel, it is John Mark. So in the gospel, according to Mark, some Greek words are interpreted, and Aramaic language, John Mark qualifies to be Saul, since he had a Jewish background. Words like the words we see here, they are got from the Greek dictionary, meaning the first word means the young girl, wake up. Then we have another word which means my Lord, my Lord. It is called Elion, Elion. That is my Lord, my Lord. So such words are believed to have got from the Greek books. So, and they say that John Mark is one of the people that could interpret such words. Among other things that can portray Mark being the author of Mark's gospel, we have gospel presents some agencies, which implies that the writer must have been a secretary of Peter, and this was John Mark. So a lot of things were portrayed out that were trying to show John Mark being the author of this gospel. Why? There are some key things that you could look at, and for example, you can be having a friend. When a friend normally uses a certain word, so whenever you hear someone using that particular word, you get scared, and you may think, you ask yourself, how comes that this person is using the words that I know that a certain person is using? So there are some things that John Mark used in his gospel, and it is believed to have been known by only one person, Peter. So that was enough to show these people that this information is got from the close associate of Peter, and they believe that the only person that Peter closely associated with was John Mark. So that portrays, that signifies, that brings out clear evidence that it is written by John Mark. Why? There are some keywords, there is that information that was too personal, that it was only known by Peter, but surprisingly it appeared in Mark's gospel. That already shows to the readers there that it is John that composed the gospel. That is the authorship of Mark's gospel, or John Mark's gospel, and that's the evidence that was displayed to really show that it is John Mark who composed the Mark's gospel that contains 16 chapters. Mark's gospel contains 16 chapters. It is a brief gospel. It is a gospel that is summarized. And if you look at the John's gospel that we shall look at after this, it contains 21 chapters. However, they have some things in common, and then they also differ at a certain point. So that is the authorship of John Mark's gospel. I beg to submit here from here. Have a good